Welcome to the Power of Perception podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Langi Hola. This idea to create this podcast was based more on the fact of there wasn't any sports-based Polynesian podcast. I just wanted to fill a lane to give our Polynesian athletes an opportunity to have a media outlet where they can speak freely about our culture and the blessings and burdens that come along with it. I also wanted to shed light on how we as people have so many stereotypes, which I believe if we could become more aware of these things, that it could help our progression immensely. And last but not least, there are so many mentors, coaches, and other people as well who have great impact on our Polynesian sports culture, who definitely deserve just as much praise for the obstacles they have overcome and things that we could definitely all learn from. So thank you for joining me on this journey as I hope to inspire and empower the next generation of young Polynesian athletes to raise the standard of excellence. Welcome to the first episode of the Power of Perception podcast, introducing my longtime friend, all-state running back in high school, coaching guru, like just a genius when it comes to X's and O's. Most importantly, man, the credibility he comes with, OC at Juan Diego right now, was a position coach in terms of running backs. And then on top of that, he was, I think he was also another position coach at Cottonwood. He was also a running backs coach over there as well. My longtime family and friend, Coach Tana. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Okay, we'll go into like the very first question I usually want to go into. So like being that like this is going to be a sports podcast, I feel like growing up playing football, one time or another, like you get caught by somebody. It's like, and it doesn't matter who you are, like eventually everybody gets caught. What was your story of the first time you were like, dang, he got me good, whether it be in high school football or right before high school? I know you told me one of Falau when you were playing at Jordan, but like, what's one maybe during high school football where you feel like, dang, I did not see that coming?
I got one every year. Ninth grade, I have a sophomore, and I have a junior one, and I have a senior one.
Oh,
so
shoot.
which one do you want to hear?
Let's hear them all.
Okay, sophomore year. All right, so remember, flashback to Little League. Ninth grade, we played Little League. Remember, it was called there was bantams and there was juniors. So my last year playing, I was at Jordan, and I was on kickoff team, and I used to run down on kickoff team, and I don't know why Little League teams would put their fat linemen in the front row. So what I used to do is I'd target the linemen, and I'd run down there and I'd like truck them, and then like set the tone for a whole team, and everyone go crazy. I used to do that, and then come the very next year, sophomore year, I go transfer to Juan Diego, and our very first varsity game is against West. And I'm not playing. I'm only on kickoff team. That's the one thing I try to get on. And I showed it to them. I could get down there. I could break down. I could tackle. So very first varsity game, bright lights, and we win the coin toss, and we say, okay, we'll defer, and so we kick it. So my back, I'm the very last guy in the line. So my back is everyone's on the sideline, and I could hear them all like hyping me up and stuff. And I'm saying, yeah. And like in my mind, I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna wow the whole football team right now. First game of the year, West High School, and they put a big old guy in the front line. I'm like, I'm gonna get this guy. I'm gonna go running hard, truck him with all my might. This dude's gonna fall. Everyone's gonna go crazy. Everyone's gonna respect me. Like all the seniors are gonna love me after I do this. So we kick it off, and I run full speed at him as hard as I can. I try and truck him, and this dude just stands there and just nudges just a little bit forward and trucks the heck out of me. And I feel so embarrassed. I get trucked that I try and pretend like I'm kind of injured, and then I'm like getting up slowly. And as I'm getting up, the guy runs right by me for his touchdown. They returned the opening kickoff.
Oh shoot!
And whose lane were they in? Whose lane did he score on?
Your lane.
Yeah, that's my lane. Yeah, that's my story of. And West beat us that year. Oh man.
Name drop. You know who the lineman was?
No, he's a big old Samoan dude. I don't remember. I wish I did.
Man, that's crazy. I think for me, in terms of like first time I got? Like, that's probably what I'm gonna call this segment. When was the first time you got? We were playing. So I had just moved to Alta. It was my sophomore year, and we had our black and white scrimmage. We scrimmaged against the JV. I did pretty well against the JV. I thought I held my own. And then we're going up to varsity, and the last time I had seen Jay Black, he was probably like 6'5", like 215, 220. So this time I see him, he's 6'7", like 280, like 280 as a junior in high school. And I was like, gosh, damn, he's huge. I'm a $195, like 6'2" defensive end. I was like, this guy outweighs me by 100 pounds. So I'm just like playing speed and finesse, like staying away from him the whole entire game. And then I remember Parker Erickson started as a sophomore at Alta. I think he ended up going to Utah State, but you know, I'm trying to play speed so much with Jay Black, like everything feels like free rush, because I'm like, even when I'm going in, I'm going wide. When I'm going out, I'm going super wide. And then I went to pitch one time, and they ran a trap play, and I did not see it coming. And it's pretty much, it was our best offensive lineman, I think, on our team at the time. He came, took a step, and then it was the first time I felt like Jay, I got through Jay Black, because he has these long death grip type arms. And as soon as I shoot the gap, I come through, and I see, I think it was Chase Kaba at the time. Chase takes the handoff, and he goes to cut, and boom, I flip. Like, it was the first time I had been hit that hard. And I hit the side of the turf, and I look up, and like, it was like a stampede of elephants just running past me. Look up, and it's like, Chase is like 60 yards downfield in our black and white game, and I was like, damn, that is the most embarrassing moment of my life. I was just like, I looked at, like, making sure no one really saw me, and I just like put my head down and just like chalked to the side, like, don't believe nothing happened. But yeah, that's my first. I think that's the only time I've ever been like embarrassed like that. Yeah.
Dude, lifting's big, man. When you come in after never lifting, or like you only lift for that summer when you're a sophomore, it's different guys who've been lifting for 3 years, 4 years.
There's a huge difference.
You can tell on the field, man. It's not Little League where it's just like the most talented person gets it, you know. Lifting plays a huge part in football.
Okay, so I think the question I wanted to start out with, let's kind of like backtrack with your career in high school. I know you were an all-state running back, what, your senior year or your junior and senior year?
No, just my senior year.
So you're all-state, you're getting ready to go to college, walking on at Utah State, right? And you come off 2 back-to-back state championships, and you play in an all-star game, and you tear your ACL and PCL?
ACL, MCL, shattered bone, meniscus, but then I strained my LCL.
Oh, so you're close to almost blowing out your knee completely.
Yeah.
Describe the emotion. Like, you're probably thinking like, oh, I have a chance to go get ready and play right away. And then you see all your friends, you know, get PT at Utah State, and then for you, you're like, dang, I'm stuck in this rehab room. Me, Robert Turman at the time, at Utah State. Like, what was your psyche like? How pissed off were you during that time? I guess.
I think I just went with this. You know, my motto is just go with the flow. So I was just going with it. Going there first year, okay, maybe the next year I'll get better. But during that same time, during times most people will get more angry throughout the time, I think I came to acceptance that I didn't really like playing football. It kind of hit me. I'm like, yeah, I don't really like playing football. So I'm like, I was at peace with it. I'm like, yeah, I'll just go on my mission. So there was like a little tiny regret, like, man, all my boys made it big over there. Like my friend Frankie Satera, Jake Dowdy, Jamie Markosian, like all these guys, they killed it. They all got scholarships, like how Gary promised everyone, and they just killed it. And I had a little regret, but then I was at peace with not playing, because I never really wanted to be a player growing up.
Wow.
I didn't want to play in the NFL. I didn't really care to play in college. I wanted to be a coach. Ever since
think that's what has always really like separated you ever since we were younger. Like, I remember my father-in-law was asking me like, "Hey, so who's your first guest on your podcast?" And I was telling him, it was like, "Oh, it's my cousin." And I was telling him, I think he might have been my first friend I made here in Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, "Really?" He's like, "So why are you bringing him on?" It's like, in terms of like coaching and X's and O's, like, I don't know anybody that we would just be sitting down in the middle of class, like just chilling at home, and he'd pull out a notebook and he'd be like, "Drop a defense. I want to see if I can beat it." And so I'd do like a simple like 4-3 base defense or 3-4 base defense, and you'd like do some weird scheme where you put like 3 or 4 offensive linemen, you have your center right here on the side, and it's just like quick pass throw, and then everyone like a screen straight down the sideline. And then he was just like, "So how old was he?" He's like, "I don't remember a time where he wasn't doing this." So, and like there was like notebooks and notebooks of notebooks
Oh, yeah, I had a lot.
of plays. And I remember like it got to a point we would be watching games and you would remember certain concepts or like certain plays of how things happened and how they developed. And kind of go into what was your inspiration in terms of coaching? Like, why did you choose being a coach over being a player?
You know, this may sound corny or weird, but like I grew up, I loved college football. Like I watched it in the 90s, late 90s. I went to every single BYU football game, 2001, 2002. But the one thing that got me sold was NCAA,
Yeah.
the video game, where I could choose my play and then I could run with them. I'm like, oh, this is like, it fascinated me. I was like, wow. And then I remember the first Madden that came out where you can create a playbook. You know, where you could draw up your own play. It was 2005 with Ray Lewis on it. And that just like made my mind explode. And I'm like, man, I want to do this. So that's all I think about every day. Like even to this day, all I think of is just like football plays and moving things, like moving players around and doing different things. I don't know. I just have like a...
So you could say like this is like your life calling in terms of you always knew that one way or another you were going to be a football coach.
Yes, yes, I did.
Wow, that's. I think we all knew that, like all of us friends growing up, but like to see the success you had, like I just try to like personalize it with me. Like I've never like ever like seen myself as a coach. Like being an athlete, I always wanted to achieve something in terms of just being an athlete. And then when it came to being a coach, I remember you always used to rave about GA, like Gary Anderson, like he was your guy, like he was always like, oh, like man, like we went to school with his sons and we went up to Utah State. Explain to me like what was the impact that Gary Anderson had on your life?
Just the kind of person that you can be. There's not really one word you could describe someone, because I don't know, he wears a lot of different hats, and he's like a lot of different people to me. He's like he's the hard guy. He can be hard on someone and he can love them at the same time. He can be that person. And I saw that because growing up I only saw coaches who are one way. A coach is either he's really just like a hard-nosed coach, a mean coach, or then there's another coach, he's only a nice coach. But then you go up into, you know, higher levels and you meet guys who can do both. And I was like, what? You can do both? You can be a hard-nosed guy and a cool guy? I was like, that he was the first person I ever saw did that. And then I met more coaches who were like Elisa Duyaki. He was the same way. So just, I don't know, when I was growing up, I was like, man, which kind of coach do I want to be? Do I want to be hard or do I want to be soft? And then I don't have to make the decision anymore. You know, you can be both. So yeah, that's what I got from Coach Gary Anderson, is being able to play both sides.
Wow, man, I think that's crazy, because I remember when we went to the Utah State camp, we were on the Renegade team, and there was one day where he had it was only the juniors and seniors. No, it was incoming seniors only for a certain practice one day, and it was like the better kids in the camp for this day. I think we had James Washington there. I think he went and played up at Weaver State. But there, do you know the Bounties out in Logan?
Yeah, I know.
LJ?
Yeah.
Hilarious. So I remember we were doing stretches, and for some reason LJ was wearing this neck roll, right? And he couldn't bend all the way over because how like it was stuck in the back of his neck. And I just remember hearing GA scream. He's like, Law 2. He's like, you can't fucking bend over because you got that big ass neck roll. Take that off. And I was just like, oh shoot. And like everyone was laughing so hard. I think Johnny Luke was there, a few other kids, and we were just dying laughing. And I just seen Latu just like put his head down, just like trying to tug at it, and he just throws it off to the side. And we were rolling. I think we were making fun of him after the camp. It was funny though.
That's funny because they actually, I know they have a relationship before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they knew each other.
So he can talk to him like that.
Yeah, so he can talk to him like that.
Yeah. Man, so when it comes to like coaching, X's and O's and all that stuff, who would you say was your biggest mentor? Like who kind of put you on? Like it's like this is what this is what that is. Because I know there must have been like a learning curve in terms of learning all this stuff, or did that stuff just come naturally to you?
No, I didn't know crap. When I was 8 years old, drawing up plays, I used to draw defense, but I didn't know where defense is lined up.
Yeah.
So I always put the D tackles in double A gaps, and then I put the D ends in like either 5 techniques or right outside the widest guy. I'm like thinking that's how, but
Instead of like a 1 and a 3
yeah,
and a 9 out
or
here.
7, yeah.
7.
Like I wish someone would have taught me when I was younger.
Yeah.
This is how defenses line up, but I never. Yeah, but now I'm getting put on right now by all my boys at Corner Canyon. They are putting me on right now. Coach Care with his offense and his lifting program, and defensively quarters match from Frankie Sotera and Casey Sotera over there. They are putting me on. I was just talking to their O-line coach today, BJ Cavender, put me on O-line stuff.
He was a part of that Jordan team that took state, right? BJ?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He was a stud. He was like Mr. Football his junior year or something. Yeah.
So like I kind of want to like get into like the nitty gritty in terms of like the X's and O's. Like what specifically have let's say the Corner Canyon guys have taught you?
Quarters, like this defense. I've sat on some of their Zoom meetings and just knowing that what quarters is, like I was kind of ignorant when I first got into coaching. I'm like, okay, there's cover 2, there's cover 3, and then there's man, either 2 man or 1 man. But learning about quarters defense just blew my mind. I'm like, this is a defense where you match certain aspects, and now I've bought a bunch of books on it, a bunch of books from Sabian about cover 3 match, and man, that's just like, I'm still learning. Like I learn every day. I'm always reading something, always online looking at something. But yeah, I'd say defensively, I'm getting put on right now on how to match offenses, and it helps me as an offensive guy. Say, okay, what's going to be quarters? Okay, what's going to be quarters out of trips? And I already drew up all those plays, but I'm keeping it a secret just in case I play Corner Canyon in a 7-on-7 or something. Yeah, so I'm drawing a bunch of beaters, and I ask questions. Like I'm asking legit questions, like how do you run that defense? I want to know, and so I could run that defense. You know, if the time comes where I'm like a DC at a program. But then the other part of me is like, yeah, how do you run that defense so I can beat? So I'm getting put on right now with quarters.
Man, I think when it comes to like learning the X's and O's, my little brother Mata, who's getting ready to go play football up at Utah State, I remember I used to always like drill to him, like, hey man, like, you know, when it comes to knowing your responsibilities and like just doing that, it's like in high school, like the bare minimum will still get you an offer. Like if you just know your own responsibilities, like you're still gonna get an offer. It's It's like, but when you start to take over games by yourself is whenever you physically are dominating, and then mentally you become just as dominating as you are physically. And we had a specific moment where I think they struggled one game. I forgot what game it was, and this was right before they played Tipview his senior year. And to clinch their division, they had to beat Tipview. And I think Chase IU, is that
For what team?
for Tipview? IU. What's his first name again?
I thought Chaz went to...
Chaz IU.
He didn't go to Westlake?
He transferred to
Oh, okay.
Tipview his
Yeah,
senior year.
you're right.
And so we were watching film, and me and him were just sitting there, like, you know, I just know a lot of base stuff, like based on like what players say, and I can just like pick up little things here and there. And I remember they ran this jet sweep at Tipview, and every time they run the jet sweep, they never did it fake it. Like, we watched like 3 games of game film, and I was like, bro, it was like, if you see this jet sweep coming, back up, gain some speed, and beeline for where he's gonna be. It's your little cousin who got the ball, Spencer Ika.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
For...
Wasn't he?
he's at Provo.
Wait, which? It was the Ika kid though.
At Tipview?
Or maybe it was Provo.
It was Provo. Provo was good, too, that year.
I think it was Provo.
They had that receiver that went to Washington.
Ty Jones?
Ty Jones.
Yeah.
They had a tight end that went to Utah State.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were good.
So all I remember is he came off the line and what's it called? Boom! Like the tight end's trying to block him as soon as like the kids come and the jet sweep, and he blows up the tight end and the running back in the same play. The running back fumbles, and Mata would be celebrating before like he even recovered his own fumble. And then after the game, I was telling him, I was like, hey, it's like, remember what I said? It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. That was all me. He's like, that was all me. I was like, you freaking punk, dude. He's like, you know, I showed you that like before the game. And then he was like, hey, like for real, man, I need to start watching film more. And then this guy, he didn't even watch film for the rest of the year. I was just like, man, freaking idiot. And so like, now that he's been back, he's matured like big time. Like, I've seen him since he's been back. He reached out to Wana Kavenga. And we work out with him every single day, like during the week, Monday through Friday. And while we're working out, he'll be like talking to Mata, like while they're lifting. It's like, hey, so like whenever you guys are like when you're in buzz or when you're in this or when you're in that, it's like, so these are your checks. And then like one will just be telling him, it's like, you read like inside out and this to that and then like just teaching him all the base rules of the defense. And he was just like, oh, okay. And so like I'll see him and one texting back like during the week. He's like, hey, make sure whenever like you go into your Zoom meetings, this is what you need to be doing. And I think, man, like if kids would just understand that at a very young age, and it's hard. It's one thing to tell them like now that we're older, but like for them to like fully comprehend what that is, I think it's a game changer for them. So were there any specific inspirations in terms of coaches?
Oh no, I knew coaches growing up since I was little. Like I always knew who the coach was at that team, who the coach was, even in high school. So in high school, of course everyone knew Dupay and like, yeah, Dupay. But guys who I seen in real life, who I idolize, who I don't want to say it now because they're my enemies, but no, not really, is Les Hamilton. I used to like look at him and see him wear a visor. I used to put on a visor. I'm like, yeah, man, his teams are tight with Ammon Olsen and Parker Walbeck, Shaq. Man, like I used to love his team. Sky Main, is that one of the receivers?
Yeah.
I remember he had a million receivers. I knew all their names. I'm like, man, I want to be like Les Hamilton. And then yeah, now he's an enemy coach. But I'm a 2-0. I think I'm 2-0. I'm 2-0 against Les Hamilton.
Oh.
Just to let you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All the smoke, huh?
Yeah. Because I was the head JV coach the past 5 years, and he was coaching the JV team whenever we go over there and play. So yeah, if you're listening to this, Les, just remember that. All right. Well, don't talk about our varsity record though, but talk about the JV. Oh. Yeah. Varsity, not good. JV, yeah.
Man, I'll tell you a funny story. So, when I was in high school, one of my biggest regrets was I was really lazy between my sophomore and junior year. So my sophomore year, I did really well. Like, I think coach, like everyone was telling me at the time, so, oh man, you work hard this off season. You're gonna start as a junior, and then you're gonna play with IE Beaver and Parker House Connect, all those guys. And they were hyping me up, telling me, it's like, we already have our right end solidified. Casey Thomas at the time. You work hard, left end will be all yours. Like, that's all you right there. So me getting high-headed, like, I remember I had a cousin, I won't drop his name, but he was so, like, gifted athletically, but he never worked hard. And, like, I remember in my head, like, this is how dumb I was at the time. It's like, it's like, I wish I could be that. Like, I'm gonna, like, aspire to be, like, the really gifted kid who doesn't work out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I never lifted, I never ran, I never worked hard. And for the first, and I think up to that point, that's who I was in terms of being an athlete. And it finally caught up to me though, between that time, my sophomore and junior year. We come into the season, and my dad, I remember he told me, it was like the worst feeling. So we had our black and white scrimmage, and I was getting locked up by everybody, like, because we were playing against the varsity guys. We smashed the sophomores, but we were playing against the varsity guys, and I was just like, what the hell? How come I'm not playing varsity? And then I remember they did 2-minute drill, and I didn't get past my man once, and I was like, fuck, man. And I could feel how heavy my legs had felt, and like how much work I didn't put in. And then my dad came up to me after the game, and he was like, you sucked. And I was just like, damn, I already know. Like, I'm not trying to hear you right now. I was pissed off. He was like, all that time you wasted in the summer, didn't work out, this and that. And, you know, it kind of drove me into, like, getting the starting role my senior year. But what was funny was I think we were like going over grades, and I didn't have the best grades, like one semester. And he looked at me and he's like, hey man, it's like, you gotta get your stuff together. Matter of fact, like everyone was in the room, and it was like our whole team. He was like, hold up, like, if you would have worked this hard, because it changed my whole mentality between my junior and senior year. Like, I gained 25 pounds of muscle, finally got in shape to play. And then he looked at me and he was like, it's like, if you would have worked this hard last year, you would be a D1 athlete right now, but you aren't. And he just walked away. And I was just like, oh man, that was like the worst feeling. He told me. And then later throughout the season, I finally got the starting job. But man, Les Hamilton always had like crazy one-liners, like that all the time though. And it didn't matter who it was for, but man, he had the craziest one-liners.
That dude's smart, man. I look up to him. Like, I know I said that he's an enemy now, but I still look up to him. Like, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, smart coach, man. Like, respect. I remember there was a conversation on Facebook where we were talking about who was the greatest teams of all time.
I saw that.
And I forgot who started the conversation.
It was that guy from East.
Oh,
Glendale guy.
He works at the airport. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, he's one of the OGs though.
Yeah, but he was saying,
well, like OGs were responding.
Yeah.
Like there's an OG named Tom Larson, and his son was in there responding. I saw Les Hamilton there. I'm like, man, there's some heavy hitters in this freaking thread.
Yeah.
Oh, I was immersed. I was like, man, yeah.
Man, everyone was saying like all these teams, and I still to this day think that 2010 Bingham team.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Stu. It's not the 2003 Wolverines or the 96 East Leopards.
But in terms of versatility, like they're the only team that can do both on offense. You know what I mean? But at the same time, have 9 guys on defense going D1 that year.
Yeah, I don't really like to, like, especially when they do the same when we talk about the best college team, is see how they went to the NFL. Like, that's different. Like, people develop different. Like, you can be a really, really good college team, but then all your guys go wash in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because I'm a USC fan, okay? But, like, the same thing in high school. Like, okay, you had NFL guys, but does that mean that they were that good?
Mm-hmm.
Like, sorry, you gotta talk about the team, and you gotta talk about the coaches.
Yeah.
Like, you can't switch out your coaches. You gotta have the same coaches that, you know, that was coaching those teams. But yeah, Bingham 2010. Yeah.
Man, I can go down that whole entire roster. You had Stephen Cantwell, quarterback. He played at Dixie State. Dixie?
He played at he went to Dixie, took the starting job from my quarterback, Cody Stevenson. Shouldn't have happened. And then he went and killed it at Weber State.
Yeah, that's what it was. But yeah, like, he broke all the records, and then, you know, he was a beast. I remember playing against him, like, AAU basketball growing up. And then I think he was on our team at one point. So he was a beast. Then you had Harvey and Manoa in the backfield. And then on the outside, you had Josh Smith. Man, who were the white boys? Oh, man, I can't remember their names. But I forgot what the two other white boys were. Cold, like, they both had bounce, they had hands, like, super athletic. All three of them went D1. Then you had Alex Damotiao, who I thought at that time in the state was the best run blocking offensive lineman in the state at that point. Like, you knew when he was run blocking because he turned his knee inside. And Cole, as much as I love Cole, anytime Cole had the pinch, I remember he used to tell me, he's like, damn, Alex is a freaking load down there. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, just a tank. Like, his base is so freaking strong, and they're trying to make me fit against a guy that's 80 pounds stronger, heavier than me, and he's stronger than me. So he was a beast. Kesney was on my side.
I thought Kesney was better than Alex.
No, so Kesney was more of a technician. He wasn't a mauler. You know what I mean? But his skill set was on defense. He was a very quick, agile defensive tackle, get in and out small spaces. And so that's why he was the perfect change-up between Senny and Lowell at the time, because Lowell was a sophomore playing on the varsity team. And you have Senny, who just clubbed the hell out of everybody when you play them. And so you have two, like, real run-stuffing guys who are downhill rushers in terms of just, like, power rushers, like, take you off the ball. And then you move to their defense, like
Moses Kamatule.
Moses.
His little brother plays for us at one day.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Moses still has the most unstoppable move I've ever seen.
Long arm, what was it?
Yeah. The long arm, and he had the fake spin or the, like, spin all the way around and get around you. And he used to tell me, he's like, man, he's like, you know, Austin Ulrich? He's like, that dude holds me every freaking play, bro. And then he's like, you know, it's funny. He's like, he would laugh about it when we get to, like, the sideline or after the game. He's like, bro, I was holding that whole game. They didn't blow the whistle once. I did not care. But man, he told me, he's like, my Austin Albrecht at the time was like 250. I think Moses and Baker Pritchard at the time were both like they both like 260, 270. And Moses' get off was second to none. Then you move to their linebacking core. You got what's that Miko kid's name? Braxton. Was it Braxton? I can't remember. It starts with a B. So you had him. I think he went to Weber State. You had Manoa, Pikua, and then everyone forgets that Jared Afalava was on that defense at that time. So you had 3 D1 linebackers all playing, and then on their back end they had Coach Peck's son, I think.
Remington? No. Where am I getting that name from? Remington?
No, he was the older one.
Oh.
Was it Bridger Peck? I can't remember. But yeah, so literally they had like 16 guys go D1, unstoppable. We played them. I was just like, and then like mentally we already lost the battle when we come in. Like kids who I know don't throw up before games, all of them were throwing up, and I was just like, these guys are already scared. You know what I mean? And so, man, my opinion is them. only team that can run the ball down your throat. Oh, and then we forgot to say, like, Harvey Lange's backup. He knocked it down for a little.
Oh, yeah, he was a beast.
4.40, like, fast, quick in and out guy. Perfect change of pace guy for Harvey's downhill running. So, yeah.
That was a good team.
Stacked, man. Like, at every single.
Hey, maybe call me a millennial because I'm going to use a team this past year. This past year's Corner Canyon team, they were good. Like, ain't no defense stopping this offense that they have. I don't see any defense stopping them. But can their defense stop
that run game?
That run game
and
yeah.
the pass.
Yeah.
Their play action too. So that probably just would have turned into a shutout. But the one thing they do have is they have guys who can get to the passer though, with only 4. Yeah. Because their linebackers can run with everybody. So what they would do was they would have their corners play off, and then they would just be like, "Whoa, give you guys everything under 5, 7." It's like, well, if we get the ball again, we're running the ball with ease. So that was the thing with those guys.
Yeah, if you ever down against Bingham, the game's over. Like you ain't coming back on them. Not with their offense.
I think we were down when Alta took state against Bingham that last time they won state with Ammon Olsen in them.
Oh, it was a day game, huh? 2008.
21-17, I think.
Yeah, it was a day game. I remember. Was Rosenwald the quarterback or Ammon?
It was Ammon.
Oh, Rosenwald.
Parker Webster, I think he had a huge catch down the sideline to pretty much put the game away. That game was crazy. I seen Harvey Lange trucking seniors as a sophomore, 230 pounds. What was funny though is he lost weight as we got older as seniors. Yeah, I remember we had a defensive end, Dan Adams. He would try to get it in Harvey Lange's head. Like all of our players, like all the white boys would always do this. They would grab his nuts at the bottom of the pile, and Harvey would be like, "Hey, bitch, stop fucking touching me." He's like, "You do that again, I'm gonna run your ass over." And Dan kept doing it, and you'd see him, and you'd see him running away from the pile, and he'd be laughing so hard. I was just like, "Oh shoot!" It's like, "Dan, why you laughing, bro?" He was like, "Oh, it's like Harvey gets to the bottom of the pile, like he worries more about us trying to grab his nuts than he does like the play or what he's supposed to be doing." I was like, "Oh, for real?" He's like, "Y'all crazy, man." It's like, "Hey, whatever works, you know."
I got a funny story about that.
And no, this is the funny part though. So they run that stretch play where Harvey's like 12 yards back and he hits the corner and turns. He puts his foot in the ground on that stretch, and Dan was containing, and he tried to just meet him down the line. Harvey just boom and just went straight through him like bad. It was like a 15-yard run, and he's on our sideline, and he walks back and looks at Dan. He's like, "That's why I said don't fucking touch my nuts." I was like, "Oh shoot!" I was like, "Dang, funniest thing I ever seen." Like from the sideline watching as a sophomore. What were you gonna say though?
So when I was a sophomore, we kicked an onside kick in the playoffs, and then I got it. I recovered it. I was on the kickoff team, and then there was a big pile, and there was a guy like facing like face mask to face mask with me, and he had his hand down there, and everyone tried to rip the ball out, and he grabbed me there too. And he grabbed it, and I looked at him in his eyes. I'm like, "Yes." And he's like, "Let go." I'm like, "Yeah, that's right, fool. You think you're crazy? I'm crazy. Grab it harder."
Oh, you were conditioned by scout camp, bro.
Yep, you already know the deal. Don't hurt me. Like, shoot.
Oh man, that's crazy. So I think I want to like change lanes. What I want to talk about. Remember when I sent you the text about like positional stereotyping? One thing I felt like, I don't know if this is true, this is just like personal feeling. Oftentimes, like when Polynesians come into certain teams, when they don't have enough athletes to fill certain roles, like whatever's the default of need that they need at that certain time, 9 times out of 10, like they just throw a poly kid in there, right? So, like example, let's say you're at an all-white school, like I was at Alta, and you go to this school, you have all these skill position players and this and that, and let's say I define myself more as an outside linebacker or inside backer or this and that. It's like, but they don't have any athletes who, in terms of like physicality and toughness, who can play down on the line and be physical and not get pushed around. So just by default, like a coach is like, oh, we can put him right here, sacrifice for the team. You know what I mean? But in terms of for the athlete, what's best for him, you know, it doesn't really suit him. Like he can get the job done, but he won't get looked at just being the position that he looked at. So I've always felt like for Polynesian kids, we oftentimes kind of like we identify ourselves with just being the guy who sets the tone in terms of toughness. You know, the guy who sees himself as the warrior type player, like, oh, I'll go head up with anybody. Like, I'm gonna lay the wood and this is that, which I totally understand, because when I was younger, like, yeah, I embraced that. Now, like, looking at that, I feel like it kind of puts like a barrier, or like
A ceiling.
like a ceiling to where we don't like expand our horizons to everything that we're possibly capable of, right? So if you think about it, we don't have anybody who's made it to the league like playing the cornerback position, right? We don't have anyone who's ever made it to the league who's a legitimate, like, outside the numbers wide receiver, right? Like, we've had a guy who's played tight end, we've had a guy who's played on the line. We've never had a Polynesian running back be a featured back in the backfield, right? We either are skilled to positionally play a scat back, or a guy who's strictly power, but never a guy who's like somewhere in the middle, where he can do both and at the same time be the bell cow for the team. And then in terms of a quarterback, like, we've never even had like a starting quarterback make it to the D1 level in terms of like Tongans. Like, I know Samoans have made that push with Tua and Marcus, and you have like Marcus Tuiasosopo like way back when. And like for now though, like what's your, I don't know, what would you say kids should be more open to in terms of, you know, be who you are no matter where you go?
Well, you're asking me like that, and I have to answer as a coach.
Okay.
Because you see the player's perspective.
Yeah.
Like the coach won't put me where I can succeed and get looked at in my colleges. And because I kind of understand where the coaches are coming from, they're gonna put them
Where
like,
the need is.
Yeah, where the need is. Like, we'd be better off with you at D-line than you at linebacker, because we don't have anyone else at D-line, but we can play anyone at linebacker. But it's kind of lazy on the coach's part as well. It's kind of lazy on both parts, because it's lazy on the coach because he doesn't want to have to spend time coaching and teaching that kid that position, and it's kind of like probably borderline racism that you want to put Polly's at D-line because you don't have to be smart, you just have to be strong and go.
Yeah.
When if you're a DB, you have to be smart, you have to make reads, you have to do that, and the same goes for on offensive side quarterbacks. It's probably being lazy for coaches, and also for the players too. Like, players like, no, I don't want to have to think, I just want to have to go, because there's already that stereotype of me being the hard hitter. Or like a great example would be like our boy Falau, talented. But where was he utilized? You know, just on kickoff, running down. Yeah, that was it. But I don't blame the coaches on that. I blame him on that, not wanting to pursue and be more than that. You know, like, yeah, sometimes that coaches put us in the box, but most times we put ourselves in the box.
And I feel like, you know, we need to be more aware of what we're capable of, right? So I feel like, especially with social media nowadays, I'm an advocate for social media. I think in terms of marketing and growing a business, like, social media is the best thing possible. But in terms of what you need to do as an athlete, it's the worst thing, because all you see are highlights, right? And so you have all these kids, like my little brother told me, it never makes sense to me when I see linebackers who only go for kill shots every single game. And then he told me, he's like, if you're a great athlete, you'll eventually get an opportunity to get a kill shot on somebody. It's like, but if you go for a kill shot every single chance you get, like, you know, that's just mental lapses and mental weakness on your part as an athlete. So for me, like, this is what he would say, he's like, I can go into a game and not take a shot the whole game, but if I shut it down completely, they'll remember more my 17 tackles, like me taking over the game, making every single play, than your one forced fumble that happened in the first quarter, and now you guys are down by 21 points because you missed 3 tackles, right? And so he always said to me that, like, man, like, I'm thankful for you because, like, all the regret that you had, you kind of like channeled into me and saying, like, this is how you do it, this is how you don't put, like, pretty much a ceiling on what you're capable of doing. And he sent me a text the other day, and he was like, hey man, thanks for always supporting me, like real talk, because we had like a very serious conversation before he left on his mission. And I remember before I left on my mission, I told him, he's like, you want to get better, start goal setting, like start with a number and just work towards it in terms of what you want your production to be going into the season. Because you know you're going to get a lot of opportunities to make plays. It's like, but if you have a number in mind, like, okay, let's say you go 3 or 4 games and you only have like 2 or 3 sacks, it's like, but your goal at the end of the season is 10 sacks. It's like, okay, I need to get on my horse to hurry up and get to that point. And then he did that, and I was like, oh, that's awesome, man. And so he comes back, and I learned this very valuable lesson on my mission that I feel like applies to every single part of life, which is set goals that require faith, right? And so I explained it to him. So in terms of the mission, I told him, let's say you have 5 teachings throughout the week, right? It's like, and you know these 5 investigators have already committed to saying, okay, boom, I'm about to commit to all these teachings. I'm gonna get 5 teachings for sure. Like, that's already solidified, like Monday, Tuesday.
That's a gimme.
Yeah, but those are give-me's. So if you say my goal for the week is to have 5 lessons, no faith required to do that. He's like, but it's like, if you go into the week saying I want 15 lessons with only 5 lessons accounted for, and like that's what requires faith to do. And then he's like, okay. And it's like, so how does this apply to football? And I told him, it's like, set your mind on like doing stuff that you never thought was capable for you. And then, you know, I didn't think anything of it. And then right before he leaves, he starts to tell me all of his goals and everything. And I go through and start reading, and the first thing he said was, I want to be, when people say Alta High School football, I want them to think Matahoa and no one else. Like, that's how far I want the gap to be between me and the next best player who came from Alta. And then I go down the list and saying, I want my name to be the name on the field one day. He's like, I want a whole entire shrine of all my accomplishments in my high school. And then boom, the next one was, I want to be the very first Tongan to be in the NFL Hall of Fame. And I was like, whoa. I was like, dang, man.
I like that.
And then he's like, I want to be a first-round draft pick from a small school. And then he's like, I want to be a top 10 draft pick. I want to be a top 5. You know what I mean? And then the more and more I look farther down his list, like the more unreachable goals that seem to be there. And then I talked to him about it, and then he was like, he told me this. He was saying, he's like, the biggest thing, like in terms of stereotypes that I hate the most, is when people come out and say, like, oh, like he's black, like that's why he's better than me, or that's why he's faster than me. And then he was telling me, he's like, you know, he's like, that's not fair. That's not fair to all the work those guys put in, and that's not fair to the desperation to where they come from and to get to where they are now. It's like, that's not fair at all. He's like, you know what the difference is? It's like, what? It's like, black people don't make excuses for where they come from. It's like, and then I ended up, we were like just conversating back and forth, and I was telling him, you know what the real thing is? Is like, we don't have an excuse because we have the best support system known to man. Like when a Polynesian kid makes it to the league, like
Everyone's his cousin.
really though,
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Everyone's his cousin. Like you'll see everyone like who isn't even the same race as him. Like, oh, it's like, yep, Tua, he's Tongan. That's my like, see, Tongan right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Tongan, like Loa.
And so, but he was telling me like that's because like he utilized everything he had. Oftentimes, whenever kids go into it, it's like, oh, I'm not trying to step on nobody's toes and do this and that. And my little brother, he would always just like, I'm tired of that. You know, I'm gonna be outspoken. I'm gonna be the guy who talks a little too much on the field. And then he said, you know why? He's like, because I work for this. And this is pretty much undeniable. Like, you can't get in the way. It's like, either you can help me on my journey or, like, just stand aside and watch me. And so, this is just my personal thing. Like, I think personally, like, we should stop limiting the imagination of Polynesian kids in general. Because, like, our potential is just as limitless as the next person.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing is just where you're going to limit your imagination to go.
I kind of think of, you know, we kind of actually limit our Polynesian people with football.
Yeah.
Like there's so many other things they can be. Like I remember when I used to look at the All-State things, and I'm like, oh yeah, look at all those Tongans. I'm like, man, but I should be also wanting the same when I look at the new CEOs. Like, man, like where's all the Tongans? You know, like we need to strive for things more than football. And sometimes we put that box on other people. Like, but for me, like football was what I wanted to do. Like, I think, sorry, I'm gonna say I'm an exception, but I like that's what I wanted to do. But there's some things that people want to do, but you say no, you just go do football. It's like, oh, art, drama, no, don't do that. Or science, that, no, don't do that. Yeah, but yeah, the sky is the limit for our people, and we just have a way of just limiting ourselves. We really do.
Yeah, because I remember I had a conversation with him, and I was just like, you think about all of our guys who've made it to the league and have been the most successful. You know, you talk about like Troy Polamalu, and you got Halotingata, you got my brother-in-law, Star, like Jesse Saupolu, like Mario Fatafehi. You know, all of them fit the mold pretty much. You know, aside from Troy, look, he's the one that's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like Junior Seau, Hall of Famer. But like what they do is like uncanny. Like, and I was telling him there's this thing where I believe the guys who made it are all instinct guys, right? And he was like, yeah, that's kind of true. It's like, why can't we be the cerebral guy, like the guy who puts everyone in place?
The Tongan Peyton Manning.
You know what I mean? But like that's never been that point, and I just think, you know, eventually one time or another, like we're gonna have that one kid who's that obsessed, who's that. And I was telling him, it's like if that is you and you get to that point, and then he's like all ears, I can just tell he's listening. He's like, one thing I don't want you to forget is your culture and where you come from. And then he was like, yeah, man, for sure. Like, no, like for real. Like when you get into an interview and you have an opportunity to shout out your people, do it. You know what I mean? It's like there's so many people that go up there and they're so like PC, like this is how I need to be. Like don't. But like at the same time, like we have all of this. You know what I mean? So like there's balance in between things, and you can do both. I think. This is my opinion. So that's my first stereotype. My second one is we kind of take humility too far.
Oh yeah.
Like too far. You know what I mean? All right. So this is my example. If you were to hear any of the Polynesians I just named do an interview, it's like, no disrespect to them, that's how we all grew up. Our parents taught us, you know, don't talk trash. You know, you go into the game, your game speaks for you. But then the last thing is, like, when you go and speak in front of the camera, like, you don't embarrass you, your family, or this and that. But at the same time, like for me, like growing up in the social media age, there's a lot of money to be literally every other day on social media. And I feel like so many guys think about just being an athlete when rather than it's like building a brand. Now, me personally, I don't know about building a brand, but what I would love to see is more people adopt that tradition.
Mm-hmm.
You have all these athletes who are trying to be more than an athlete, but when you reach a certain level of success, like, why not? You know what I mean? That's just more money to put in your pocket.
Yeah. Our culture holds us back a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, that's what you always been taught. Like, even to this day, I'm always like, yeah, you have to be humble. You have to be humble. But there's like money to be made, and getting your name out there to reach and influence other people. But when you hold yourself back because you don't want your community to talk bad about you. Oh, look at him, he's doing all this. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we do. We hold ourselves back because we don't want our community to talk about us a certain way.
This is so. We were talking with my little brother Mahe, and me and him always have talks like this. Like literally, like we'll dive deep into all of these type of conversations. And I was telling him, just like, first things first, you become a great player. Like that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
It's like, but once you know what it takes, and there's like sustainability, like you're gonna be great, and this and that, and you'll know when you get there. To be honest, it's like, but don't ever like more money for you will always be a blessing for you in the future, because you don't know what's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of promoting yourself and doing this and doing that, like, don't just go to school and try to make it to the league. It's like the amount of effort you're putting in to be a great football player, like that translates to life. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna be held accountable for all your mistakes on the field, you better be just as accountable off the field. And I remember I sent him a story of Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, I think, got his master's in the 4 years that he was there at Clemson. And I was like, 4 years? Man, that's crazy. And then I think someone came out with like his work schedule at the time while he was going to school, and literally no days off. Like when the off season came, he was more involved in what he like work in terms of like his foundation he had for, I think, single mother homes and something like that, because I think Work Done was the one. So he reinvested in that and then made that like his foundation. But then he was doubling up on classes, like taking 18 credits in a school year whenever he wasn't playing football during that semester. And I was telling him, I was like, maximize your time, man. It's like, cause think about it. When you're in school, you come out. For kids who don't go on missions, they go to school at 18, they come out at 22. It's like, so if you chose to party every weekend and didn't get ahead, it's like you're gonna come out at 22 being like, oh, shit, what the hell am I supposed to do? It's like, but if you double down on the time that you could have spent, it's like, and then come out at 20 and be like, okay, what? Now you have a full 2 years to figure out what you're trying to do. And so for him, he's always told me, he's like, no party, like no nothing. It's like my goal is like nothing else matters pretty much. So in terms of like athletes, I don't know, man. I just feel like my little brother is rare.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'm just biased because that's my little brother, but at the same time, like, I don't know kids, like, we went on visits with him to a few schools, and they'll try to take him to parties, and he'll be like, nah, I'm not feeling this, I'm out. And so we'll see, man. I hope that turns into something eventually one day. Okay, so now that we kind of talked about stereotypes within like Polynesian sports, who was the athlete that you kind of looked up to as a kid?
Ooh.
A Polynesian athlete.
A Polynesian athlete.
Whether that be a cousin, uncle.
Yeah, that was my cousin, Reno Mahe. Yeah, I used to go to all these games at BYU, man. on the B1U truck. Yeah, man, he was an idol. Still is. He still is an idol of mine. Yeah.
Talk about his game. Like, what made Reno such a great player?
Oh, he was like short, quick, fast, catch everything. Yeah, that's what I remember. And he never wore gloves, so that's something I didn't do. So I always copied him. So like when I was playing football, I was always number 20, and then I wanted to be like Kobe, Jordan, and one up him. So I was 21. So that was like my favorite number until high school when I wasn't good enough to get it because Frankie Satera took it. But that was like, that's still my favorite number is 21. And I always wanted like one up him just like Kobe. But man, just watching him play, how quick he was, I would like mimic him and I wouldn't wear gloves and I'd tape my fingers like he did, just like he did. And I remember he said have long nails because I guess it's because he like thought I helped him catch the ball, so I grew my nails a little long too, just because it helps you feel like. Have you ever cut your nails and you feel like your hands are weird?
Like they're naked.
Yeah. You kind of can't catch the ball
Yeah.
either. So yeah, it's the same thing. I grew my nails long when I played, taped my fingers. Yeah, man, he was an idol. And then getting into the coaching world, like everyone has a story about him. Everyone. I hear like a million stories about him. One of my favorite ones is, one time we kicked off, we punted the ball to him.
Who is this? Who's telling the story?
I think it's our current head coach at Juan Diego.
Okay.
When he coached against him at Jordan, and Reno was at Brighton. So yeah, we punted the ball to him, and he made 12 guys miss. Yeah, one guy got up, and he missed, and got up and missed again. One guy missed twice. Or another story of, we used to, sophomore year, he used to block every single punt. And then they moved him back. And we're like, oh, thank goodness. Then we punted to him, and then he returned them all year long. And then we played him again for a second time, and we're like, all right, we're not going to punt to him. So they were punting, they were shanking him. And then out of nowhere, the punt gets blocked. And what happened? He got sick of us kicking it out of bounds. He snuck all the way up to come and block it again. I'm like, gosh, there's a million of these stories that I've heard of him growing up that just made the legend in my mind. Just like, oh man, that was my cousin. He was legit, I watched him play for the Eagles. He was really good at fair catching those punts, man. That's all I remember him doing. Fair catching those punts, man. Oh yeah.
I remember what's he called? Reno came to speak one time in our youth for like a fireside we had, and I think Marlene was introducing him. I can't remember who was introducing him, but they like mentioned his stats from like his best year in the NFL. Like he averaged like 14, 15 yards per punt return.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I looked around and I was like, I never see this guy take a punt back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like whenever you say fair catch, I was like, yeah, that's like the first thing. I have a funny story about Reno. So when Reno, I think Jouney at this time was at Texas Tech. We were staying in Euless at the time, and Reno and his little brother, was it little brother or older brother?
Who is it?
I can't
He has a little brother, Tuita?
I think it was Tweety was there.
Mm-hmm.
And we had like a family home meeting for our youth at the time in Texas. And I remember Reno came over there, Jouney was over there. And the story he told in Texas was the same like analogy he used whenever he came to the youth, which was, I've heard you use this one too. It was like, your brain is like a muscle, and if you don't use this muscle, it's like you're gonna lose it pretty much. And it was so funny, like over the years, it's like, hey, I've heard you say that before. And then to see you say the same thing was like I thought it was just super funny. But the one story Reno told us at the time was, I think it might have been me, I can't remember who it was, that asked Reno, what's the hardest you've ever been hit in your life?
Mm-hmm.
And then he told us, like, we were playing Ray Lewis in preseason, and I think their starting running backs were either just not playing because they're on contract or whatever, but Reno got to start the preseason game. But the defensive guys, those guys never sit out. playing the Ravens, and he catches he takes the first handoff like 7-8 yards, and he's like, "He's the Ravens? Like, oh, they're supposed to be the best defense in the league." And then he's like, I started talking, like, I was talking mad mess to everybody out there. Mind you, I'm the smallest guy on the field at the time. So, talking, he gets another first down. And then he said Ray from the other side, like, "Oh yeah, you think you're good, huh?" He's like, "Come through that hole one more time. We're gonna see what happens." I think they ran he didn't tell us what play, but he said he went to cut up and put his foot in the ground, and Ray was waiting for him. Boom! And just blew him up. And then he was like, "Oh my gosh." And then he's like, "I can't make it seem like this hurts or they're gonna know they got me." So he popped up real quick, got into the huddle, and he was like, heard the play, and he had no idea what the play was. He went over to the quarterback. He's like, "Hey, this play." He's like, "Oh," he's like, "Run left." And he just like told him to run left. He's like, "I know for a fact I had a concussion on that play, but man, it was the first time another player wanted to make me cry after playing against him." And I was just like, dang, that just sounds like a whole nother level, you know what I mean? Because he was saying, he's like, because although I felt like I wanted to cry, I look over at Ray Lewis, and he's just like, like nothing happened to him, like it didn't hurt him at all. I was just like, dang, man, that's crazy. So in terms of all of this, man, in terms of your coaching journey, you know, you coming up the ranks and finally becoming an offensive coordinator. Before we go, what would you say is, or what would your advice be for any kids coming up trying to be a coach right now?
Network.
Yeah.
Gosh, I always heard that word when I was coming up. Network, like, how about I just work? You know, just work, do all the little stuff. But yeah, networking is huge. Going to clinics, talking to coaches. Like, I'm not like the best at it, but on my staff, I am the best. Whenever someone needs film from someone, they ask me. Whenever we need a 7-on-7 against someone, they ask me. Like, and just by showing up to clinics, just showing face, even people like recognize you. It's like, "Oh, okay, I see you all the time. Like, you're a good worker. Like, I want to give you a job." Like, that's happened to me multiple times. People's taking me out to eat multiple times, saying, "Yeah, I want you to come coach for us. I want you to come coach for us." But they don't know my situation, that I can't go to a public school and teach and coach. So, but a lot of people's done that, and I built like great relationships for that. I was actually the running backs coach for Cottonwood one spring. Like, I wasn't going to go there, but they just didn't have a running backs coach. I'm like, I'll be it. I woke up at like 4:45 every day to go coach of them, because they started practice at like 5:30.
Wow.
And so I was coaching, just coaching and learning. Like, just always go out. There's like a great Polynesian coaching community here, and I think it starts with Pala, like, and there's like Mo Maile. There's a lot of Polynesian coaches, and we're a tight knit group, and we have each other's backs. So get into that. Is networking, knowing people, because people, when you know people, then they're gonna invite you into Zoom sessions. And I got invited to a Zoom session. I'm like, I only know one person here, but this guy just invited me. I'm like, okay, it's the head coach for Wasatch. He's like, all right, like, because he just saw me at clinic, and we ate and we just talked, and so like he likes me, I guess. So just network. You never know who's gonna go out there, give you a job. And then the second one would be work. Like, don't be afraid to go make the water every day, set up drills, because it's gonna help you in the long run when you do that. Because there's a lot of people who just get head coaching jobs right from the get. They'll plan something, but they don't know how to execute it because they've never had to. Or they'll run a clinic, but they don't know how to how to download film and cut it up and make a clinic presentation. Like, there's a lot of coaches like that, but the ones that I look up to are the ones who know how to do all that. The head coaches who can explain everything on what you need to do because they've done that. They're like, okay, go set up that drill, and like a new coach will say, okay, I want that drill over there, and then someone asks, how do you set it up? Like, I don't know, just set it up. I don't know, because they never had to do it. But like now, when I'm telling people when to set up drills, I'm teaching them, okay, you're gonna put the cones here, here, here. Don't use the blue cones because they mix it up. Players think that the colors mean something different. So make sure they're all orange, all right, and make sure, and then use these lines that are out there. There's this tar mark over there. Use that for the L drill. Like when you do all the dirty work, it makes, when you move up in the ranks, it makes it easier because you can explain things thoroughly because you've been there and done that. You know, kind of like related to the scriptures of Jesus. Like, why did he suffer for all of our sins? You know, not only just our sins, but why did he have to feel everyone's pain and anguish and iniquity and any kind of sadness? Is so that when we feel that, we can go to him and he knows, he's experienced, he can help us. You know, you're not going to ask someone who's never experienced what you've been through for help. So if you become someone bigger, like a offense coordinator, head coach, whatever level, it helps if you've done the dirty work first. So that's my advice. Do the dirty work. I'll show up 2 hours before practice and stay 2 hours after. That's something that I've always done. You come in early because there's a million things to do, and then you stay late and make sure everything's tied up.
Man, it's crazy how when you find your passion, time doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And you know what's been really crazy is what, you know, me going to work or me like just doing stuff I don't really want to do. Man, when it's come to this podcast, like I've never like got lost in time as much as like. My wife kind of gets mad at me for how long I take in terms of researching certain softwares, what works, and like I'm going through scripts and researching people that I want to bring onto the podcast, and like what are like things that I can take out from them, and you know, just stuff like that. I think the last thing I really wanted to talk about was, this is something that's kind of personal to me because I always felt this way, and maybe I felt out of place when I was younger, but like I've come to grips with it as I've gotten older. Me personally, I've always felt growing up in the all-white neighborhood, you know, coming from Euless, like in Texas, like I feel like I'm a part of the community pretty much because I see people who are like me. I noticed though when I moved to Sandy though, like we're around like 80-90% white, middle school, high school, no matter what school you were going to at the time. And the big thing with me was when you go around those kids, you kind of like start to learn how to navigate around white people pretty much. Like, not to say like you have to act different, but there are things they see that are unacceptable to what we see is like, you know, that's okay, you know. And so you're kind of guarded in a sense, but at the same time, when you try to like kind of like change your ways to kind of fit how they move, it starts to rub off on you in a certain way, right? And so when you're not around polys all the time, now you're going back to the poly community, and now like you're going to like family functions, or whether it was our stake dances or hanging out with our stake. I always felt like sometimes we didn't fit in with a community that we grew up in Sandy, but at the same time, like we weren't white enough to hang out with those guys, and we were never brown enough to hang around with those guys. And for the longest time, I always wondered, like, man, why am I so awkward all the time? You know what I mean? And I think that had a huge reason to do with why I felt the way I felt all the time. And like for kids growing up in those areas now, like if you see when we grew up, like we were so different compared to the kids we were going to school with. Or now, like if you were to compare it to Bo and Shona's generation, like they fit in a lot better than we did. You know what I mean? They're not so awkward like when they do certain things.
With both communities.
Yeah,
too.
you know what I mean? And they've learned how to navigate themselves between these. But there are still those kids who don't know how to navigate. But I feel like when you're the younger sibling and see the older sibling go through that, he's like, man, he looks stupid right here. I'm not gonna look stupid at that point. But I feel like for a lot of us, you know, it took time really to understand what that dynamic was in terms of, be comfortable with who you are. Like, there are things you can take from all walks of life and all types of people, and to incorporate it into your life, to making you who you are. I think for the longest time, whenever I was going to Alta, man, I didn't know who to hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I had kids my own age as a sophomore that I would hang out with, and kids who were freshmen, so we're all kind of the same age. Then I would hang out with Ati and Beaver and them, and then we would hang out with them, and then I would hang out with Chase and Kawa, like he's 2 years older than me, and I was trying to navigate through the groups of people, who do I really want to hang out with? And the more and more I got older, my group got a lot smaller and smaller and smaller. And then by my senior year, I only hung out with one kid my whole entire high school, my whole entire year. And so, I don't know, I just thought that was something I wanted to bring up to you. Maybe what's your experience?
I'm happy that I grew up the way I did. Even though sometimes when I was younger, man, I wish I lived in Glendale. Bunch of all Tongans all day long, or other things like that. But now I'm grateful I grew up the way I did, because I think being around different people, remember we're at church, we're with the Tongans, and then we go to school, we're with the Polynesians, and sometimes we're with old people when we go visit to a funeral. You're around. It taught us social intelligence, how to navigate,
social awareness.
How do I talk? Because there's some people who grew up in, I don't know, you grew up in the inner city and you're around the same group of people your whole life. You never know how to talk to when you go to a job interview.
Yeah.
We're smart. We know how to talk white. Oh, hey there, man. What's going on? Yeah, hey, doing good.
Oh,
and then when we go visit our cousins in LA, hey, cuz, what's good? What's happening, bro? We know how to do that, and I think that's made us smarter, socially.
Yeah.
We know how to navigate that when some people don't know. Or there's white people who don't know how to do that when they are around,
Black people, or around us.
Polys, don't know how to do that. But I'm grateful that we learned that, how we know how to talk around different people.
Man, that's hilarious, because Lisa, literally my little sister, she can get any job in any job interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was the same way. You put me in a job interview, I can just tell by looking at people, okay, this is what they want, this is the type of questions they want, okay, how do I navigate through these questions, what are the things they just really want to hear. And it got to the point where I got 7 jobs in the span of a year. Mm-hmm. And it was because I knew I could go into an interview and kill the interview every single time.
Yeah. Went to school at Alta, you know how to talk to them white folks.
and it was crazy though, because when you get exposed to money for the very first time, real money, like Pepperwood, South Mountain type of money, where you're dang, my parents are broke. You know what I mean? You go into their pantry and it's the size of your whole entire house.
Yeah, it's a walking pantry. I'm a walking pantry.
This is tight.
Yeah.
I was so that was
multiple fridges. What the heck? Dude?
There's a downstairs and an upstairs fridge.
Yeah.
You get the indoor basketball courts, and and then when the mom says, "I'll take whatever you want," I was open the kato, put everything in. You know what I mean? It was man, that was so funny. Man, that was a fun time, man. Oftentimes, I talk about with my little brother, these are the hardships we had to go through, but at the same time, man, there's blessings on every single side of this. So I'm thankful for that perspective you gave me. I kind of forget those things as you get older.
Yeah.
Especially not because as you get older, what's funny is all these kids that unless you work with them, you just grow apart eventually. Mm-hmm. So you just take those experiences for what they were.
I know. I talk about our youth days all the time, man.
Same here, man.
I was just talking about it today because I took my brother running up Flatiron Hill, and the other dude was 16. I'm Uncle Mike used to take us here and run 50. All right, and then we used to go to the 7-Eleven down the street, and he'd get a big gulp, okay, and drink it in front of us. Yeah. Or times when you go to Bethos and he gets 2 burritos and there's 7 boys in the back. So he gets one burrito, and everyone else gets the other burrito.
Oh, man.
Yeah, sometimes you only get to smell it, and then they split it up with everyone else, you know?
Or sometimes you go in the back and you're supposed to put all the dirt in the trash can, and he gets mad at us for telling us what to do when we just listen to his job. He's like, yeah, you guys fill up this garbage can and then take it to the front. We filled the whole garbage can with all the dirt. He told us that mug was like over 200 pounds of dirt in there. And Mike's like, man, you guys are a bunch of idiots. He's like, who's the guy who told us to do this?
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
Yo, we talk about youth days all the time, man.
I think the unity we had at that time, you know how I said, like, we always felt out of place? I think that's the number one reason why our youth was so close as it was.
Yeah.
Because we all kind of, in some type of way, like, we didn't feel like our friends at school were as close to us as our friends in the ward. Because our friends in the ward felt like family.
Yeah.
And so when it came to hanging out, and then, you know, all of us were at each other's houses the whole entire time.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I think we're going to close up, man. It's like, thank you for coming through. This is the first episode of
I didn't know this was the first episode. I thought you'd get Mata to do it, but
nah, you're gonna be the first. We're gonna do like a few intros and stuff with that with Mata. Just gonna be like about me, like who we are, and start releasing videos and cutting stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, it's like thank you for coming on.
For my whole life, I swear they try to put me in a box. I'm busting out, I'm breaking every little single lock. The power of my mind is endless if I cater to it. And all my people looking at me like I knew you'd do it. I'm yelling back, perception of the mind is everything. Now take your time and just plan out for all the time between. Look into the mirror.